good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever time zone it may be for you all. This is the sort of the bi-weekly tag network, August the 8th. So we're kind of got Dimitrij with us today. Dimitrij from Heimdall. And Heimdall's a really interesting project.
Couple of words. It's kind of an orchestrator for authentication and authorization. And so it's the approach, or actually the actual idea, is to simplify the usage and integration of corresponding components, because typically this is pretty problematic. So there are no libraries out there, no frameworks out there which will allow you integrating with more than one identity provider. It will be really hard. And even authn Connect and other protocols around there are standardized. Yeah.
And does this work as you're providing an API? So my application, I don't need to encode any of the information inside of there by using as a library. I just make API calls to Heimdall? Heimdall then proxies and forwards, kind of manages those things? How do you kind of work on a...
If you are talking about your own service, which you would like to, don't want to say enhance, but where you would like to integrate authentication and make use of authorization mechanisms, you could put Heimdall in front of it. Just declaratively define what you need. That's basically all. And if you are talking about some other service which you are going to communicate to, that's the same. Yeah, Heimdall in front of it, it can do whatever that particular service needs.
So give me an example. So for example, let me think. I have an application service which provides information. It's got, I don't know, let me think of an example. Let me
provide you an example. Everyone knows medium.com, right? If you think about that, you have things like there are different subscription models.
Yeah.
Most probably there's a service for subscription. There are options to share articles. There are different options to write articles to get support on that based on your subscription model. So which is basically authorization related stuff. And I don't know whether they have integration with different third parties, etc. Like if you would like to, I don't know, share your article before it goes online with something else. Things like that. Doesn't matter. So I have a POC which I can show which kind of mimics that. All the stuff. It's not complete, by far not complete, but it shows actually all the possibilities. I can show that. This is the POC, which kind of mimics. There are a lot of services responsible for all different things. Like you see, there's subscription, there's one for profile, there's one for authn Connect permission management, there is a front end for identity management, there is kind of a frame about everything. There are about articles, about third-party integration, which is then separate, etc., etc. And if you take a look at the Docker Compose file, it's right now based on Docker Compose, you see all of these services here are listed and right now already up and running. So if I open it's started, so you see there are a couple of endpoints. If I open the corresponding browser window, I see it just like that. Yeah, it's kind of medium.com. Article Hub, the home of the future bestseller authors, share your ideas, get inspiration, and etc., etc. And if you go for pricing, for example, you see you can apply. So basically, these are different registration points, and you already see kind of Heimdall in action, because this is a subscription service. Right now, the user is not logged in. But nevertheless, it shows the corresponding presentation of the page. Start reading or whatever. Yeah, so if you would like to get this for free. And here you see also the different subscription models, what is possible. Yeah, with what the idea from my side was. Okay, I have in the starter, you don't have to pay anything, but you can access just 2 articles per day. You can only read articles, you cannot rate them, you cannot comment on them, you cannot write your own articles, etc. And if you go basic, then you can do more, and in premium you can do everything. And there's also maybe one limitation which is not written here in sense of business requirements. If you were already in premium subscription model and have written an article by yourself, you get always access to it as long as you are logged in. Yes, this is a differentiator. And obviously, this just cries for corresponding authorization models. And so how does it work? Let's first go through the UI a little bit and see what is happening everywhere. So we see this is a representation of a page when the user is not authenticated and actually also not authorized. If you go to articles, for example, we see there's a list, just for demonstration purposes. So the author, when it was created, and a short description. If I go to the article itself, you get just the excerpt. What is it? A short description, but no contents, etc. If you would be in a specific subscription model, you will be able to see more, and you will also be able to see where you so commenting area, etc. So let's go for that. So you see I'm now logged in with user 2.d, and if I go to articles and now click on that, you see there's an article body. So a completely different representation. And remember our pricing model, we are right now in the subscription starter. You see your plan, different representation. So what will happen if you go for more articles and see what happens? So we still can read it. Let's try another one. Still can read it. Let's try again. Still can read it. Let's try again. Okay, maybe there's some caching inside. You cannot read it anymore. Yeah. So how does it work? Yeah, usually if you would write it by yourself in your own code, you would, in addition to incorporating with a corresponding authentication framework or protocol, whatever. By the way, I'm not using OpenID Connect here. I'm using a product from Ori named Kratos. Small advertisement for the guys, great product. But I'm going to use OpenID Connect for something else. So how does it work under the scene? If you would go for local integration in your code, you will have to deal with different APIs. Yeah, and that may be challenging, because each provider, in that case Ori, offer their own API. This is not standardized thing. And the same is true also for authorization. Yeah? And we can shift that to the left, let's say this way. And now let us take a look on how Heimdall can solve that. In general, now let me make it bigger. I think this is easier. This is the configuration from Heimdall, where you can say, okay, which services are exposed? Do you want to expose metrics? Which log level? So here's trace to show you something, whether you would like to have an in-memory cache or a Redis like here for distributed caching purposes. But this is nothing special. The special thing goes here. This is what I named service catalog. Mechanism catalog. It's comparable to the service catalog I just mentioned, in the cloud native area, where you define, in that case, mechanisms for different purposes, like for authentication, like for authorization, like for contextualization. What is contextualization? Usually when you do perform an authorization decision, you need additional data, which you may need data which are not under your control, or which is not under your control, which is not available to your service. You have to collect it from somewhere. In the classical world, you would outsource that to what is named PDP, policy decision point, with their connectors, etc. That might be really challenging because it is not under your control as a developer, etc. So instead, you could enrich the data before going to the actual policy decision service, before talking to the actual authorization system, which does perform the corresponding policy evaluation and returns back whatever you need based on the policy executed. And imagine you would have to do all of that in your code. Will be a lot. Okay, back to the catalog. Yeah, so these are the contextualization. And finally, when you are done with everything, you would like to do something. Maybe you don't need to do anything, yeah, just forward the request, or maybe you would like to create a representation of that data, of the authentication and the authorization decision, which is then forwarded to your service. For example, what was the name of the company? Very famous one. Everybody knows them, but I just forgot the name. Netflix. Sorry for that. If you look at that, they had a really great blog post about edge level authentication architectures. I discovered maybe a year ago, so far after I have started the project. And they talk about exactly about their problems. So they had the need to integrate multiple authentication systems to give their developers freedom not to deal with that. And what they did, they said, okay, we move that to the edge, the actual authentication, like Heimdall does, but to the upstream, to the actual backend services, we create a stable representation. They name it passport. In that case, Heimdall creates just a new JSON web token with whatever data you want inside it. And then you can use it. And exactly that has been also used in the POC I just showed you. I will also show in the code how easy it then is, because in the code you just deal with JOT, that's all. You don't care about anything else. And in case of that JOT, we put a couple of information inside. So you see it's Go template, everybody knows that, at least everybody who deals with Kubernetes and other cloud native stuff. And what we put here inside is the email, whether the email has been verified, and that's basically all. And then there are error handlers, which are actually also part of this mechanism catalog, and which can then be used to do something. So in case of, for example, authentication error, so if the error is authentication error and the request header accept was text HTML, that basically means the request came from a browser, or obviously, then I will do a redirect, because otherwise that might be an API access from a client, and maybe I want to return a JSON representation of the error. Things like that. And now when I have all that in place, I can compile my rules. And one of the interesting things in Heimdall is that you can compile a default rule, which matches, if you like the word matching, when no other rule matches. So if there are no rules, or if there are no match for existing rules, that one is executed. And obviously here we say you have to always authenticate with this Kratos authentication, and at the end we would always like to have a JOT created. And if there's something wrong in sense of error handler, do that. Yeah, we just reference by the IDs, but that's why they have the IDs. And the Kratos session, for example, the authenticator, it is pretty big. So we say, okay, this is our identity endpoint. This is where you can resolve the cookie you get from Kratos and get the corresponding logged in user information. So this is the cookie you have to look for. If it's not there, then it does not apply. And this is what you have to forward to that endpoint. And the result you can cache for 5 minutes and create a subject out of the information you get from here. The result is a JSON object. And all of that, and also here, are actually JSON parse expressions. So the ID of the customer, of the user, is in the identity.id object, and whether this session is still active, to just check, can I trust it or not, check the information in here. And since you have the caching, or I have caching configuring here, I would like also to ensure it does not exceed the lifetime of the actual session. That's why I have that here in place. And I have also a couple of indicators for other purposes, like just OpenID Connect or authn and then OpenID Connect, which you will see in action later. So this is a configuration mechanism catalog. Okay, and where are the actual rules? Yeah, what is there? I just showed you the default rule. Heimdall loads rules from different sources. The simple case, if you would like to play around, is file system, where you can specify either a folder where all the rules are located, or you can specify a specific rule. So let's go to that folder and see what is there. And in that folder, we have a couple of rules. And obviously, you see the rules are named based on the actual services I have showed you here, like articles, like demo app, etc., etc. And since I said we have a default rule here in place, we don't need a rule for each and every endpoint, because this will be applied always, if nothing else is there. So let's start with our demo application, which is just what you see here. It's a home frame. Obviously, it has different representation based on whether the user is logged in or not logged in. If I'm logged in, I have that here. If I'm not logged in, I have that here. And this is what is configured here. I say, okay, demo rules, and this is the main page. And for the get methods, I'm allowing Kratos session and anonymous. So if the session is not there, then anonymous requests are also allowed. Now you could ask, okay, and where is this finalizer? Why don't you do anything here? That's because of the default rule. It's kind of merged inside. So basically, you have 3 stages when the rules in a rule. You have the authentication stage, you have the authorization stage, and you have a finalizer stage. On the definition, it's just a list, but you cannot mix the stages. And in that rule, I have just overwritten the authentication stage, and everything else is taken from the default rule. And the general idea is, as less code as possible, reuse as much as possible. This, from security point of view, this is also great, and secure defaults everywhere. So this is the purpose. And in addition, since there are resources loaded like JavaScript files, icons, etc., I allow anonymous access there. So there's no need for any sessions, etc. So I have overwritten the default rule there. How does it work for subscriptions? Because you've seen, depending whether I'm logged in or not, I have different representation here. Let's go into subscription. It's basically the same. And how would it look in the code? Subscription or this demo app. Let's take a small look into there. I have to remember where I put that. Handler. Show index page. So in this middleware, this small middleware, it just extracts the JOT token which is passed and verifies the key, verifies the validity of the signature and the other stuff which is related to JOT, like you would do in anything else. And then I just take a look, okay, if that subject is not anonymous, I can extract the token payload, so actually the user claims, and then I can set the user for the different representation in my template. If it's anonymous, I don't do anything and my template reacts on that. That's basically all. And in subscription, it's actually the same. How does it work with articles? Because you've seen if I'm not logged in, or if I'm logged in but my limit is exceeded based on my subscription model, I just get that. Just sort representation, and that's all. I don't get anything else. This is where things become more interesting, and let's now take a look at the articles. And you see this is pretty huge. So the first one is the article list. Obviously, you can access it with and without being authenticated. It's like the main page. We've seen that already. But what about read articles? We've seen you can read articles only if you have at least the free tier subscription. You will not be able to access them without any subscription. And in free tier, you can access only 2 articles per day. That's all. How to do that? So obviously, we need access authenticated and anonymous access. That's why those two, because you can see different representations. And then if you are logged in, you need information about your subscription plan, where to get it. Yes. This is where this contextualizer comes into play. Yes. The ID is a subscription plan, and we have the corresponding configuration over there. Okay, right now it's kind of static, but you could also do kind of a meta contextualizer and then use placeholders to fill in required data from your rule. So you don't need a specific contextualizer like subscription plan. You can do other things, which may be easier. And it is only executed when the subject is not anonymous. Then I need the information about the read articles. How many have you accessed already today? Yeah, this is yet another call to that one. And again, only when the user is logged in. And then we would like to use the actual authorization system, in that case, Open Policy Agent, where the actual authorization policy is deployed and which has been tested, etc. And I can reference the policy directly, but it depends on how you do your authorization architecture, let's say this way, and provide the corresponding input, which is in that case required or expected by that specific policy. So our subscription plan is that. Yeah, if there's no subscription plan in our session which we collected so far, so in the outputs, this object is filled by everything which runs before in our pipeline, which with the information from each and every thing which is executed. So it has subscription plan. So this is the ID of that, and the result from that service here, it has a JSON object with plan colon whatever the plan is. So this way I'm trying to resolve this attribute under the previously received object. And if it's not there, I put unknown. Otherwise, it's the plan which has been returned. Same also for article reads. If this is there, so it has been executed, then give me this attribute. If it's not there, so if neither that or that is there, so it has been not executed or there was an error, okay, put just that as a default and it's put there. It's then used as that for that value here. Then I use the article ID. So basically from the request, so you see here we have captures, which pass I'm matching here, articles, article, and then the identifier, which I can access also from my rules. So this is show capture and then quote. And do I have owned articles? You remember I said previously, if you have already written article, it doesn't matter which subscription model you have. So if you have owned articles, we'll get the information also here as a JSON list. And this is then sent to our Open API, Open Policy Agent. So if you go for shortly there, and there's an OPA policies and articles rego. So the package is articles, and we have two policies: can read, can write. We just have seen the usage of the read articles, and you see the corresponding data. If you take a look here, we can read when the articles is owned by ourselves. So the article ID I provide in the input is also in this list. We can read when we are in startup, but our article reads is less than 2. We can read if we are basic and article reads less than 20. Or we can read if our plan is premium. And write, okay, we can do that only when it's premium, but that's another story. And we get the response there back, whatever the response is. Usually this is just true or false. Let me check in the config because it's reused from there. Contextualizer OPA, and so we template the data. So this is the endpoint, v1 data, and this is the policy which we can then provide from our policy here. This is where the value policy, etc. goes into. So this is what I meant with templating previously said, that you can do a lot of more stuff, do things more generic in your catalog, and then fill in the required parts from your actual rule. Right now, Heimdall is pretty much opinionated in that particular sense, because from my point of view, OpenID Connect is not a protocol intended for first-party authentication and authorization, which is however used almost everywhere. Yeah. So for that reason, I was kind of reluctant to implement the functionality to drive the actual flows. So this is not yet there, but you can easily achieve that even right now, because you have the option to do the redirects, including deep links like here, and you can easily just integrate with available special purpose proxies, which just do that flow management and go on, but you get much more. The idea of Heimdall here is do one thing, but do it the best way possible. And since there are already solutions out there, like the authn proxy, like Vouch, like the OpenIDC Lua REST thingy as an Nginx plugin, why should I reinvent the wheel? They do that already. Just plug them in.
So in terms of the architecture, you mentioned the kind of the Netflix and at the edge. The kind of the intention would be that maybe I'm going to run like OpenResty with Lua, but on the kind of the very edge of my network. The authentication happens JWT or IDC token then would flow to, it would hit Heimdall before it hits my service. Heimdall, based on the rules that I configure, will then kind of sit in front of my service and determine what access whether I have access to a particular page or a particular request. It'll also, am I right in thinking that Heimdall will in some ways normalize the JWT, because based on the authenticators that they're set up? So I could have, for example, if I use Google's OIDC, I might get a different set of claims than if I use Okta or something like that. With Heimdall, I can normalize that into a set of common JWT that my application understands. So my application's now 100% abstracted from whatever the kind of the loose format of the claims of the
exactly.
Yeah, and very nice. Yeah,
because it issues its own JOT. Yeah. The upstream application will have to verify that JOT instead of the one used somewhere.
Yeah, which also makes it a great integration when I'm running across environments, right? Because I'm not always going to be needing, or it's not always practical to kind of hook up to Google Cloud for my local dev environment. I might just want to run, like you say, you're running Kratos and stuff like that, right?
I have then that also already in place. So because I previously said, okay, let's take a look at that particular kind of medium.com service. But here I have an integration with third party as well. So this is a separate service, not related to our medium.com or our, how did I name that? Article Hub. It's something else. Yeah, it is just demonstrating that you can open your APIs to third parties using then OpenID Connect, what it has been actually, and authn, what it has actually been invented, and call the corresponding endpoints. And for the endpoint implementation, it doesn't matter who is calling that. Is it a third party or is it my own application? Yeah. So let's go for that. I'm now logged out. Yeah. So because we have a SSO here in place as well. So let's go for a new token. And now you see the famous OpenID Connect or authn dialog. The third party here, or that service, says, okay, I need your email address at least. That's why it's grayed out. But actually, in sense of the implementation, it accesses the profile API, and without the profile scope, it will never access it. So let's try that first without the profile scope. Let's do allow, and you see we have just a scope, OpenID and email. That's all. This is our access token. This is our ID token. And if I try to access it, and let's now go into the logs. You will not see anything. You will not see anything because that service got a 403 error and will not render nothing here. But what we see in the logs from Heimdall is that, okay, access token does not satisfy as condition, scope matching error requires scope profile is missing. You will not get in. Let's get another token with the required scope. And now, if you do the same, we get the information. Let's try and see what happens on the same server side. So we are now logged in. Let's go to our profile. And the same API or the same endpoints are called from the browser now. But I'm not using OpenID Connect in the browser. I'm using something completely different. It's a cookie session-based thing. If I go to personal data, I can still see my information. Let's change it to something, Dimitrij, to my namesake. And if you go again here, so that you see I'm not kidding, you see there's an update directly. So it works just because Heimdall completely abstracts away everything for the service implementation. Just the same job. Yeah, this is how it basically works, and you can integrate with whatever you want in sense of authentication and authorization systems. With the limitation mentioned before, it does not drive the auth, respectively OpenID Connect flows. It up with something else which does it, and then you have everything.
Yeah, I like that. It's Unix principles. It's not difficult to kind of to do that. And so in terms of an architecture as well, do you see that you kind of run, I mean, this is probably and the answer is probably it depends, but I'll answer the question anyway. Do you kind of see people running a single Heimdall proxy in front of every sort of service instance, or do you kind of see people kind of having almost like an internal gateway type approach?
Yeah, like you said, it depends. In smaller projects, indeed, people, so especially in those projects where people are not using Kubernetes, Heimdall is indeed used as a pure proxy in front of application, and that's basically all. In Kubernetes setups, at least I know about, people are integrating it with the ingress controller, respectively gateway API. So the ingress controller gateway API does the forward out call to Heimdall with whatever is configured there, and that way each and every request goes through it. So usually it's not these are just the headers, not the payload, but there are some cases where you would like to check the payload as well.
In the instance of the gateway API, again, is from an architectural pattern, I mean, you could potentially still have multiple Heimdall proxies, right?
There are no limitations, and indeed, if we go, let's go for the dev version, because I showed you the configuration from the dev. Go to rule providers. So I mentioned before how Heimdall can load rules. So you've seen file system in action, but you have HTTP endpoint, cloud blob, so like S3 plug stack, S3 storage from AWS or the Google Cloud, doesn't matter. But we have also Kubernetes, and for Kubernetes you have on the provider side, there's a out class. And that way you can give an instance or a deployment a name. And in your rule, you can reference that name. So if you go to rule set resources, you can reference that out class name. And only the instance which is responsible for that will load it. So you have a complete separation. And yes, in addition, you can have multiple deployments with complete different configurations.
That's very nice. I mean, I think it's a great project. I was looking a while ago, and I think I love anything that kind of does abstraction. I think it just makes sense. It's security is difficult, and the less security code I have to write, probably for me, the more secure my application is going to be. So being able to, again, but use technologies which I'm used to. So like configuration from Kubernetes CRDs if I'm running on Kube, or if I'm not and I'm just running on a VM, I can still, pick things up from a file. But then again, being able to use OPA as an evaluation engine, I think makes a lot of sense for folks probably used to writing Rego and OPA policy.
You are not limited to OPA. You can go with OpenFGA. You can go with SpiceDB. You can even go with the fancy thing like XACML. So, okay, you don't want to use XML there. You would rather go for alpha. So it's or respectively the XACML JSON profile to describe that. But you can do all of that. It's all possible.
What's the history behind Heimdall? What drove you to creating in the first instance?
You can find the history actually online. When was it? 2021. I've given at the ORIS Summit a talk about how we started using ORI products, and those days. So the issue we had those days was immigration from a huge monolithic identity and access management system to something more modern, because it was just a pain in the ass. And the question was how to move out those different parts from that monolithic system and still be able to perform the business functionality without having much changes in the services which are already there. And the idea was, okay, let's use a corresponding service, which those days in my house was ORI AuthKeeper. It was the first thing based on my experience and my background in security. And I do a lot of thinking there. It try to solve that challenge actually, to integrate authentication, or how to say it better, to allow identity and access management systems be implemented in a microservice way and not in a monolithic way how it's usually done. Unfortunately, it was pretty much it had pretty much a lot of shortcomings, which I was unable to solve given the code base over there. And then I said, okay, let's go from scratch. It's not a new idea. It's basically what the Zero Trust Networking paper from NIST is describing. The idea is not new. I know exactly what I want. I did a lot of that stuff in sense of custom development, like scripts, like custom login providers, etc. In many projects. Let's just put that knowledge together in a project. And that was basically the born hour of Heimdall.
What are your goals and what's the kind of the roadmap? What's next for Heimdall? Obviously, sandbox acceptance.
What's next? I have my roadmap over here. So the next is my milestone 0.15.0 alpha. Actually, I'm thinking to remove alpha because people are afraid of that. The project is by far not alpha in sense of functionality and also stability. But in my case, or in my opinion, alpha means, okay, how many breaking changes I'm still anticipating. And there will be some. And in that milestone, I would like to resolve most of them so that I can just...
I was going to say, I think on that, for me, the kind of a API stability is kind of V1. But so I think you can do that. Like, I would say if Heimdall is running in production, it's about as far from alpha as you can. It
is running already in production around the world, and I know multiple projects.
Yeah, I think you're safe. I think you're safe there.
The only issue I have, it's right now it's more or less a one-man show. That's also the reason for applying for CNCF Sandbox, with the hope that the community will grow. That's the current roadmap. And as you see, there's also item here, right? A guide how to Heimdall use with keyclock. So actually, the idea is to show how to integrate this other services like authn proxy or authz to let the people use all of that in first-party context.
Great work, great project. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. See you.
See you all next time.